The formation of the Communist Party of South Africa in 1921 came 4 years after the Russian Revolution, which inspired working classes across the globe to engage in a struggle for a socialist world.
So when the Communist Party was established in 1921, it was largely a white organization of white workers with radical ideas, but in a context of South Africa, where race and racism are so fundamentally important, this created a tension within the Communist Party.
A few years later, in 1928, the CPSA would go on to include the black majority within its ranks. By the 1940s, the Communist Party became a radical organization which drew the support of the oppressed.
What one sees evolving from this period is a great attempt by the Communist Party to recruit black members. And so from the late 1920s, but particularly the 1930s, but especially the 1940s, what one sees is the Communist Party becoming one of the main organizations of radical ideas, communist ideas that attracted radical African leaders, Moses Kotane, Mabhida, Edwin Mufutsunyane, Josie Palmer, many black men and black women, poor, working class, but also educated, who saw in the Communist Party a more radical organization compared to the ANC, because ANC at this point in time was still quite a conservative organization.
Affiliating with communism and socialism could at the time be equated to committing a cardinal sin. So much so that the state imposed the Suppression of Communism Act in 1950. 3 years later, former Communist Party members began operating underground in the newly formed South African Communist Party, which had begun working with the ANC.
We're fit, actually. We're really specimens of physical fitness. We're carrying our weapons, you see, AK-47, machine guns, grenades, lots of ammunition. And those rucksacks were heavy, but we didn't feel it.
I introduce to you Comrade Chris Hani.
A young Chris Hani joined both Umkhonto weSizwe and the SACP as a teenager. He cut his teeth in Marxist theory and guerrilla warfare training.
His commitment was to the national liberation of our people in our country, the overthrow of white supremacy and apartheid, the creation of a democratic country, non-sexist, non-racist, a country of justice. And he was very clear in his mind that the road to such salvation was through the ANC leading the National Liberation Movement, but a communist party, a Marxist party that could stand up and provide voice and organization to the working class.
Despite the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and communism in Eastern Europe, here in South Africa, the Communist Party's fortitude was being solidified under the leadership of General Secretaries Joe Slovo and later Chris Hani.
I'm one of the people who have seen comrades dying, both inside the country and outside the country, in the struggle against the regime of terror in Pretoria. I know the names, I know the faces. I know how these young people put aside everything in life to concentrate in the fight against white domination.
People like Chris Hani, also Joe Slovo and others, but particularly Chris Hani, sort of embodied to people the idea of a principled activist who was prepared to give up his life, who held communist ideas, radical ideas about redistribution of the economy, overcoming poverty, and also, very importantly, in terms of his personal, views on politics, was very critical of what was already evident within the ANC, people vying for power, people positioning themselves for self-enrichment, self-aggrandizement. And Chris Hani took a very clear position, a very clear principle position against those kinds of things.
Let us build our party.
With leaders like Hani having once led the SACP, how has the party fared in post-apartheid South Africa?
The SACP has been extremely relevant in a sense that it brings an alternative to production that is based on people before profits. It's not meant for profit, but it's meant for the needs of the people. And therefore, we have launched massive campaigns, particularly against the capitalist system, not only in South Africa, but worldwide.
For Newzroom Afrika on Channel 405, I'm Ziyanda Ngcobo in Johannesburg.